Talk about track and control your IT power today. I'm Jason Sherman, support and sales engineer person here, doer of tasks as I labeled myself. So I help with talking with people about our products and see if it's the right fit before you purchase, see if it makes sense for what you're trying to do. And then I usually help on the after you purchase as far as support and tech support and installations and training and things like that. So a little bit of everything. And I do webinars, various other tasks. So track, control your IT power, what does that mean? Well, it depends on who you are and what you're trying to do. It might be something where you're just trying to track some devices, things like power, temperature, etc. So power being the main thing here, but I'll talk in the context of just getting data in general for the most part. But we do have tools to help with that. We have, which I'll show you here in just a minute. So getting started here. So this is our webcast, 30 minutes, probably won't be 30 minutes, but we usually do a polling question. So it looks like we're doing a polling question. See if I got one in here. I guess the first question just has to do with general documentation of your network, whether you're tracking power or not, maybe how you're doing that. Was it, spreadsheets, video, things like that. Let me launch the poll because it doesn't do you much good if you don't see it, I suppose. So here we go. So if you guys want to press some buttons, that'd be great. So, I mean, all these tools are good, spreadsheets and Visio. I've got no problem with them. I certainly use spreadsheets every day and Visio periodically. But, from the standpoint of tracking documentation or creating documentation about your network, they can be a little cumbersome over time. They're fine in the beginning, especially for smaller sections of the network, or if you're doing very specific tasks, like maybe just some racks, elevation views for a few cabinets or, 20, 30 cabinets, whatever. But over time, it can be a little cumbersome, especially if you're trying to track data points like connections. And but when you get into things like power, then it's a little, certainly harder, because power is one of those things where spreadsheets and Visio seem to be the seems to be the winner here. So end that poll. So yeah, the page down here. So tracking power, generators, circuit breakers, PUs. Some are easier said than done. Heat, power, and other things just through SNMP discovery. So I'll talk about that, but and power strips and how you might document those things. Sorry, my phone. Let me gonna make noises. Let me see if I can disable those noises. I should have before, so sorry about that. So it comes down to what you want to track, what's important. Maybe it's the rack PDUs, maybe it's not, maybe it's just other things like, overview stuff of your network, maybe just some simple devices. It just depends. So moving on, page down, there we go. See netTerrain in action. All right, let's see netTerrain in action. So let me switch gears here to the product. So who we are, we're graphical networks, and we do, network documentation. So we allow you to create network documentation. What the documentation is really dependent on what you're trying to do. We don't sort of force you into some framework. It's more, well, here's a tool, and here's a lot of options and features and flexibility. And then you decide from there, what's most appropriate. And what most appropriate might be, well, I'm just trying to do some basic logical type drawings, right? So that's all I care about. That's all I need to do. Or they might be physical from the standpoint I need to know connections, point to point, port to port, etc. Or I might need to go in and do something like more monitoring type things, where I want to do more of a discovery, and I want to be able to grab information from devices. And that's kind of where we're sort of looking here is, when you start to go down the road of I would really like to track information, but maybe automate it or get the information on a regular basis, then of course you need a way to go out and grab that data and grab that information. And that's basically what I'm going to talk about here for the most part. But so we do things like you might have a network where you've got a view of a building, floors, rooms, data center kind of thing. Depending on what you're trying to show. I went down the wrong road here, by the way. I want to go into my Baltimore. In this drawing, I've got like the substation and a couple generators that I'm showing just connected in. I'm not really showing details or data about it, but just generally where they are and how they might connect into my network. So if you want to track information, right? And then we get down into like data center view. So from the standpoint of what you're trying to track, is it all
Jason?
the power in your, yeah.
We don't see your screen.
You don't?
No, we just see the netTerrain in action.
Oh, well, I'm glad you mentioned something. Hold on.
Yeah.
I got to start all the way from the beginning now. No. Let me do a new share. Screen. Okay. I guess I thought I had it on the screen. Sorry about that. All right. So let's go back here. Now you guys should see something. Yeah, it says share on the screen. So back into the hierarchy. So with netTerrain, I'm showing basically physical overview of the environment that we're in. Of course, now it's giving me grief, I guess, because I switched shares or something. I'm not sure what happens, but give it a second here. Sorry, guys. See if I can get this to catch up. Well, there we go. Very slowly now for some reason. I guess the screen share's slowing me down a bit here. So let me go into my building. There we go. Starting to catch up. Floors, things like that. All these things, this is what we call hierarchy, which actually in your project, you decide what that hierarchy is. In my project, I happen to go into buildings and floors and stuff like that. A lot of my customers don't care about that level of detail. They may be doing something very specific, like I said, a logical type drawing, or they might be doing more, well, they might be doing racks and data center type stuff, but maybe they don't care about all the different levels and exactly where they are. They might just sort of throw it in two buildings and just go straight to the point of where they need to be. That, again, up to you, depends on what your project is and what you're trying to do. But backing up, you may have data centers where you have a cabinet of devices and you want to track total power used versus power that's supplied to the device itself, the rack. So your cabinet will have a certain amount of power supplied to it, and then of course you need to know how much of that power are you consuming. Are you sort of on the borderline of what you can do? Can you add more devices or not? And that's dependent on, of course, the total power consumption if you're talking about power. I mean, there's other things you track too, like rack utilization maybe, or even weight from that standpoint. And you also, it may not be about rolling up to the rack level. Maybe there's specific devices you're trying to get information about. So when you look at a device, you want to know, how much power in general does this use or require, this device. Or at the PDU level, you might want to know, what's its power draw, what the interfaces for the PDUs, where they connected, or maybe if those have a status of on or off and those types of things. But a lot of that fine detail, the thing about fine detail is it leads to its level of effort, right? How do you keep that data up to date if people are going out and making changes in the environment on a regular basis? So you have to have a good process sort of built around all this, or you try and automate things as best you can, right? So again, sorry, I'm not sure what's happening with my share here. Seems to be taking a break. So we get to the PDU, and you see all the interfaces for it, and you can see connectivity. That's what these links are representing. What is this connected to? What is, in this case, what is the feed for, let's say, the PDU? Where's the circuit breaker? That kind of thing. Is there a panel? And if there is a panel, what's the feed for the panel as far as you know, where's this coming from, kind of thing. So, again, level of detail, it's really up to you what you track, how you know, some of those things are how you want to track. But as far as getting data from systems, whether it's a circuit breaker or a generator or whatever the case may be, you know, how do you get data out of it? Well, you have to interrogate the system in some way. And you do that, in our case, sort of one of two ways. You'd use our what we call the collector, and you connect or interface with the device, whether it's a PDU or, you know, a camera or whatever it happens to be, or a switch or router. You interface with it in some way, and then you pull data from it. You say, hey, give me this data. This is what I care about, and give me this data on a regular basis. And that's where this our collector comes into play. So the collector is a collection of connectors. There's connectors in the collector. Say that a few times. And each of these connectors allow you to pull data from systems, or they do a discovery. So in our case, like SNMP, I would go out and put in data about the SNMP device or devices, go out and do a scan and pull data back. Well, what does that have to do with what you're trying to do? Well, one is you can go into the system and you can set up a scheduled discovery. So you run this as a service and you have it go out, and every hour, every 24 hours, every week, whatever makes sense, have it go out and pull data from a system. Well, what is that data? Well, that data could be, in my case, I'm just showing a temperature sensor. So this is pulling temperature on a regular basis from a device. This device isn't active. This was a device that's in the office that I don't actually have access to directly, but I've got information about it. But the point of the device, or, you know, getting the data, is you want to collect certain data from the device, right? So one of those things might be power or temperature. So you collect that data and then you push the data, or again, you automate it where it's pushing data into your system or systems, right? So back into netTerrain. So, sorry, I didn't mean to bring the poll up. Trying to move my thing out of the way. So, for instance, that device that I did a discovery against, called a sensor gateway, it would have something like a temperature value that it's getting on a regular basis. So that regular basis might be, again, every hour, every 24 hours, whatever it is. You can do things like what we call visual overrides, where the appearance of the object changes based on, let's say, the temperature exceeding a certain number, you know, exceeds 90 degrees. Then you change the device so it's red and it flashes and, you know, does some other things. You could even set up an email notification for that. But, you know, that's more on the monitoring side, which you probably already have tools to do. We're talking about, of course, showing it in the environment where it is, and then, of course, being able to see data points about the object as well. So that's one of the tools, this collector tool that we have. I mean, it's more for just power and temperature, of course. It's for doing full network discovery, or for interfacing with other systems you might have, SOLO and ServiceNow, et cetera. We also have something called the netTerrain EM. It's a little more advanced from the standpoint of if you're really trying to get into power monitoring and even controlling a device, you can do that with the EM. And the EM allows you to do a discovery and use things like not just SNMP, but something like IPMI, which, if you're not real familiar with IPMI, it's basically a protocol. Let's see if I can go out and find my, first of all, the discovery side of this. So I can go add a task to do a discovery and choose different protocols. So IPMI or SSH or SNMP, depends on the device type. Usually PDUs or SNMP. IPMI is more for servers, specifically things like HP, is it iDRAC, I think, and Dell, maybe Dell's iDRAC, I forget. Each one has their own flavor of IPMI, what they sort of call it or refer to it as. But IPMI is typically for servers, and it allows you to control the server, not just discover data about the server, but actually control it, right? So control it like I can turn the server off or on, or even, control how much power it uses and that sort of thing. But again, it's a tool that allows you to go out and do a full discovery, put devices in a cabinet, and actually show things like, full power or even temperature as an average of all devices of, let's say, the cabinet itself, or devices as well. I go out and do a discovery of devices, and each device I can look at and kind of see different data points for the device over time, right? So lowest, highest, and basically an average power consumption. So over the last hour, over a day, a week, a month, up to a year, basically, you can see what it was doing power-wise. And then when you start to see these things, these trends, you can start to do things about it, and either, take devices that you don't want to exceed a certain threshold, maybe control the power if it's a server, or just monitor it, because again, if you do have problems in the data center with power, you have limited power, and you don't necessarily want to add more power to it, or you can't for whatever reason, it's just an older data center, you can't really bring more power in, then you might need to have some more granular ability to track that power and understand what you have and then make decisions. This also gives you the ability to actually get more into the device itself and see things like CPU temperatures, power, multiple CPU temperatures, and so on, right? So this can do also fault alarms, fault management, et cetera, so you can see kind of the faults that it may see over time. And these things are all aggregated, so when you look at a total cabinet, you can look at the whole rack as a whole and see what the total power is for the rack, et cetera. And you can see it by row or room or the whole data center. And this data, we actually interface with this. This is basically a separate tool from netTerrain, but we bring them together through the collector because we interface with the EM tool and bring that data back into netTerrain. And again, update the objects in netTerrain, the physical documentation, so you can see the new data points and so on. And then there's connections between these as well, so you can get back and forth if you want to. This is really if you need to get down to that type of power monitoring. If you really just need to do something like, I just want to pull one data point on a regular basis off a device, or I have a temperature or power probes or whatever via SNMP, then you can just do our normal netTerrain connector SNMP discovery and pull data that way and pull it on a regular basis. So it's not something you have to do. You have to use the one tool. So because there's obviously licensing and things you have to take into consideration for all these. But our connector is part of netTerrain, so it's not licensed separately. It's just part of the package. But that's really what I wanted to cover and talk about. I'll see if there's any questions out there. And then if you ever want to try something or you have more questions, just let us know. Happy to give you access to try it out on netterrain.com. You can sign up. You can have access to the EM. We have a read-only account that you can get into. If you reach out to us, you can get in there and kind of kick the tires a little bit. You can't really use it, but you can certainly try it out. You can try out the netTerrain software as well. You can sign up for that and get your own sort of mini environment there to use the software too. So I'm going to pause my share, stop my share, and there is another poll I think that we wanted to do. Let me do poll number 2. It's a little late for this one. I think I should have done this one sooner because it was, what are you interested in learning about today? But it's always good to see. So if you want to check that out, answer that poll. And then if you have questions, there's a button you can either raise your hand or there's a question button you can get into and just, ask a few questions. So a lot of heat sensors, interesting. People ask about heat sensors, PDUs, circuit breakers, power lines, generators, yeah. So I'll revisit those. The temperature sensors, again, usually that's SNMP, although you can get temperature off devices too, but if it's mainly sensors around a plant, if they support SNMP, you can get that with our collector and get those sort of data points on a regular basis. PDUs, power strips, circuit breakers, even generators, if they have SNMP hooks, you can usually get at least a read. But if you want to get something over time or even control power, that's where you get into more our EM tool, that other tool that I was showing or talking about. Okay, let me see if there's Q&A in here. Dismissed. open chat. Measure temperature. You use a temperature sensor and then integration sensor. Yeah, so if you want to measure temperature, it just depends on where you want to measure it and what you have. If you want to measure it from the devices themselves, then you interface with the device, either using the EM software or SNMP Discovery. It just depends. And you can just read the temperatures from there. And then it just becomes a data point on either the device, the temperature sensor. So again, let me go back to this. Share my screen again. So if we go back to like this guy here is a temperature sensor. If I can get zoomed in a little. Come on, don't be afraid. I wonder if I can use my little annotator here. Oh, let's see, I can draw. Oh, this will be fun. I don't know if there's a pencil thing to use, but draw lines, here we go. So this guy here, my little temperature sensor guy, and so if I click on him, see if I get any data. There we go. I'll give it a second. Again, a little slow today. So that would have data points like on the left. It says temperature reading. So that would be a value that's getting pulled from the collector or getting pushed from the collector into netTerrain. So you get a regular sort of value on a regular basis that would update. You know, I have customers that do that with temperature sensors, and they do it with PDUs and a couple other device types. You know, even things like generators where they need to see an aggregate of data. But they have, you know, they have an interface there. So usually SNMP, they're going to interface with those devices and pull the data on some basis, regular basis, maybe every 24 hours or every hour. They're not necessarily trying to get it super real time, but at least something where, you know, if there's an issue, they can react to it relatively quickly, right? So, let me see if there's any questions. No questions. But so, look, if you guys do have questions in the future, you want to try things out, just reach out to us. But you can also go to, if you're not familiar, you can go to netTerrain.com. and you can sign up for an account there. Annotate. I'm logged in right now, it looks like. But normally you'd log in or you go to the site. I'm logged in, but you would clear all drawings. There we go. Let me log out. You'll see an option for signing up. But again, that's just that's for netTerrain. That's for the documentation side. But if you want to talk more about getting data and power and all that stuff, you might want to reach out to us and we can do a broader demo. Or again, we can talk more specifically about what your needs are, what you're trying to solve, or what issue. So, but you just put in an address and say start. It'll send an email, and then you click go, and then it goes. You don't have to put in any details. Just your email address. That's pretty much it. So, all right. I think that's it for today. Thanks everybody for coming, and stay safe out there. And we'll hopefully see you at the next presentation webinar. Take care.